Hello and welcome to today's edition of The Wealthy Lightworker. I have the amazing Jill Jardine with me. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you, Colleen. Namaste, everybody. Thank you for inviting me, Colleen.
Namaste. Jill and I've known Jill actually for a very long time. She is a professional astrologer, psychic, holistic health practitioner, energy worker, counselor, metaphysics teacher. You are a certified hypnotist, you're an acupressure therapist, a yoga teacher, and a Sanskrit mantra instructor. So what don't you do?
Well, I've been doing this for a long time, so I have to keep adding new tools into the toolkit there, the modality toolkit.
Well, you are such a light, and we're so grateful to have you. Before we jump in, we're going to start with what we always start with, a nice deep breath to bring us into the moment. Wonderful. All right, Jill. So the topic of our conversation today is to keep those clients coming. I love that. And I think that that's something that so many people, no matter what, what you do for work and where you come at this as a light worker, keeping that steady flow is so important. Before we jump into that, though, I want to just hear your story. What got you? You said you've been doing this for a long time. How did you get into light work? How did you find yourself on this path?
Well, I actually got to start when I was a teenager. Well, I could always see the people who were on the other side as a kid, and it would freak me out, to be quite honest. So I kind of had to turn that off. But I would see the people, of course, they'd come right when you're going to sleep. So that was one manifestation, and I really put the heads under the covers to not have that happen anymore. But I did get drawn to astrology at 15 years old, and the tarot around the same time. And a friend of mine's mother happened to be an astrologer conveniently, and she let me read a lot of her books. And this is at a time when, there's not a lot out there. It was before the big 1980s, 90s new age explosion. So I was reading classic astrology books, got kind of into it, started reading people in high school and, reading their cards and reading their charts, and again, freaking them out because I'd be like, oh, your parents are getting divorced, and the kid wouldn't even know that was going on. So then I had to kind of tone that down because I didn't want to be called a witch. So fast forward to the 80s when it starts getting more acceptable, and I'm out there doing readings for people for fun. And I was working in a metaphysical bookstore in Harvard Square when I was working at Harvard, and I was doing readings there. And this is by now it's the late 80s and it's more acceptable. And so I decided I had worked in traditional jobs. I have a background in PR, but I went and got a master's in counseling psychology to legitimize some of these esoteric pursuits, the astrology, the psychic readings, the intuitive readings. So I went and got a master's in counseling, which was the only kind of viable credential to put that all under. And so I got that in 1991. And then from that point on, I, finally put up the professional astrologer, but I had been doing the readings long before that. Actually, it was, in the 80s, I was doing them and getting paid, but I was like, okay, how much can you afford? $25? Okay. So I wasn't doing it under the professional credential, and we all have to start somewhere, right? But I had other jobs. I worked for CBS Network. I worked for Harvard. And I had a lot of professional jobs, but I always did it on the side. And I committed to it as a full-time practice as of 1997. But I had been teaching workshops too for years too, of breath work and metaphysical healing. And I started to get all these certifications in the late 80s and 90s, some of the ones that you talked about, to just because I thought that being a hands-on healer was really important as well. And so I did a lot of, massage and acupressure, shiatsu, because to move people's energies and so I've been working in all these capacities for, several decades.
Wow. And one of the things that I find so often is the case with people is that there's kind of an inciting incident that happens in their lives that makes them choose this path or makes them really feel drawn to it. Was there anything like that in your life that kind of triggered this for you?
Well, I've had about 3 near deaths. The first one was a drowning as a child that I came back from in a pool.
Whoa.
That was very weird because I did have an experience of hearing all this music as I was like leaving my body. And it was
Wow.
weird because it was music that I later got into. It was
Oh,
kirtan, it was Sanskrit being chanted.
oh,
And so
wow.
I got exposed to that at 4 years
Ooh,
old
I
on my
have
near death.
goosebumps.
Yes, which, well, I call that now in my wisdom that I, over the years, that
Mm.
was a past life lead through. And I used to have a recurring dream about,
Mm.
being in India. It is very, I'm not going to get into it, but I did have, a lot of stuff about India come through in my
Mm.
dreams. And so I guess a pivotal thing would be when I met my first guru from India in 1989.
Mm.
Guru Nandi Ma, who is connected to the Dan Yoga lineage. It was also when I was getting trained to be a yoga teacher for the first time in the late 80s. So all
Mm.
of that was kind of like, reconnection to the past life stuff. And then that's when I got exposed to the Sanskrit and the mantras and the yoga, and it all felt like I've done this before. This is so natural. I remember this. And the astrology of India too is quite interesting because that's another branch, and I've been practicing that all along and learning that's a lifetime. But kind of, I think I got into the astrology because I had been one in a past life. So a
Wow.
lot of what I find is that I kind of picked up where I left off, which I think a lot of people do.
Mm. Wow. Wow. 3 near-death experiences. That's a heavy calling, that's when you know.
Yeah,
There's
they were spaced out luckily. One at 4, one in let me see, one giving birth to my child in my 30s, and then one in a really bad car accident.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So, and
Wow.
each time it was like, you're gonna be okay. You're not done yet. So
Oh,
I keep plugging along.
yeah. Still here. Love that. Thank goodness you are. So you, with that whole journey, right? One of the things that I think often is an interesting piece of it is your money experience, your money story through all of that. Did you find, I know you mentioned earlier how charging what they could afford was a big part of, how you first approached it. Was money an easy piece of this puzzle for you?
Well, no, I actually had to do, like they say, don't quit your day job. So that
Yeah.
was the big motto back in the 90s when you were trying to branch out as a healer or an astrologer, psychic. So I actually didn't quit my day job. So I worked in traditional industries. Like I said, I have a background in PR, and I
Mm.
worked for Harvard for many years. And I was doing readings for the graduate students on the side, which was really fun. And they'd actually pay me, some of them. So, but what happened was there's a thing we have, it's kind of cool because astrology does show us developmental stages, and there's a big one that comes between 28 and 30, okay, called the Saturn
Mhm.
return. So
Yep.
I had a shift at that point. That's actually when I got my master's at the end of that. And then there's something called the lunar nodal return that happens every 19 years. So my second one came in at 36, 37 years old, and that's when I really was like, okay, you know what, I kind of want to leave behind the day job, and I want to be doing this as my primary, mode of work. And so I was working with another healer slash therapist at the time, and she was really good. And she was like, "Hey, you don't have to do it yourself." She goes, "There's people who want to help you." Long story short, I manifested my second husband, who was a really good support in that respect. But it was when we were getting together that he was like, "Listen, I'm going to pay the rent. You go, quit your Harvard job, and start doing this work, and we'll
Oh,
see what happens." So I had support, but I kind of did a lot of prayers, and I did a lot of manifestation work on that. And all I needed was that little nudge from my therapist, healer friend, to say, open up your consciousness and help is on the way. And sometimes people forget that, and help can come in many, many ways,
mm.
whether it's personal or professional or as a benefactor. But, I did a lot of work leading up to that to create space for that in my consciousness, that yes, I deserve support, and that there's ways of manifesting. And it wasn't him. Then I really was plugging away, at creating a practice, and I have been doing that now for 20 years plus, in the South Shore area, 25 years. But and that wasn't, I had been doing it before he showed up, but he did help with, you know, giving me permission, which I just needed someone else to give me permission to quit my day job and plunge into it. And I actually counsel a lot of people who are going through that process of, you know, am I going to commit to the work, you know, the soul work, the healing work? Am I going to commit fully? Because it really just takes, and you know, like, he didn't really support me. It's just that, oh, now I don't have to worry about rent. Later we got married and whatever, but I still have worked the whole time, and, you know, manifested people and experiences to help support the work. You know, it's kind of feeds off of itself.
Yes, that's beautiful. So let's talk a little bit more about the techniques that you used to open your consciousness and to be able to receive that support and these, you know, to keep your business afloat for as and thriving for as long as you have.
Yeah, so a lot of it is, currently I have a specific technique, which I will talk about in a minute. But for people starting out, I actually read a lot of the manifestation classics. This is How to Attract Money by Joseph Murphy. There's other authors that have been around. This guy's been around since the 50s.
Wow.
So there are other classic authors that have been around that I read all of this in the late 70s and 80s. John Randolph Price, Catherine Ponder, Flora Scoville Shin. These are people who were publishing these self-help books in the 50s and 60s, and you rarely hear about them because they've been overshadowed by The Secret and other books like that. And then, you know, as we got into the 80s, there was a whole nother level of books being published. This is Shakti Gawain. She was great. Creative Visualization came in the late 80s. There was another guy, Dick Sutphin, who did a lot of really cool work. This is Creating True Prosperity by Shakti Gawain. So this was the next wave. This was the 80s. Early and 90s stuff, you know, creating it by visualization. And, you know, I tried visualization. My whole thing with visualization, it doesn't work unless you align emotionally. So if you say, I'm going to manifest $300 tomorrow, you have to like feel that it's already been done, and you have to feel a sense of joy about it. So, and also if there's a subconscious, as a therapist and as somebody with a background in psychotherapy, one of the biggest things that gets in the way is people's subconscious. So you really have to find ways of calming the subconscious, because you could be you could be putting out all of these affirmations. You could be, you know, what's the word? Fake it till you make it, telling yourself you're prosperous, oh, you're, you know, manifesting every day. But if there's an old program that is interfering with self-worth, like if they're at some point in somebody's growth, if they were told they're worthless or that they don't deserve it, whether they were told that or they just feel that, that's always going to be an internal saboteur. So making that, going from the subconscious, being aware of it, is the first key to healing it. As Carl Jung said, we do not become beings of light by imagining the light, but by making the darkness conscious. So we have to look at our own subconscious patterns of sabotage. And I do a lot. I help people with that all the time, you know. So that's where the hypnotherapy comes in. But the technique that I use now, which affirmations are great and I still use them, especially spiritual ones. That I just recently reread a book by Paramahamsa Yogananda, Scientific Methods of Healing, which is great. I highly suggest that. He's the yogi who wrote Autobiography of a Yogi. Yes. But he also has other series of books that are self-help in nature. Mind you, they were written in the 50s too. So I always go back to the classics because of this genre, because I think that that's where we get the real gems. They've been kind of watered down in the current manifestation. So the other technique that I do predominantly now in combination, I like going back to my start. Here's the Last Mode of Prayer by Greg Braden. I don't know if I showed this one yet. This is more recently from 2006 publishing date. This is for manifestation and prayer. This is a very helpful book. Greg Braden is a a new paradigm leader who started writing books about probably 20 years ago or
I
more.
met him actually.
Yeah, so yeah, you
He's
know all
great.
about him.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
So this is a great book. It's real, you can see it's small. It's a nice little easy book to carry with
Yeah.
you. And
Yeah.
so he has some great tips in that. But the thing that I'm primarily, and I teach groups and I teach this, and my big outreach as a reverend in Sanskrit mantra and an instructor of Sanskrit mantra. And I think that's how we got together at one point, right? With the
I think it was an astrology workshop, but
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. But I think I may have incorporated the Sanskrit into it.
yeah. Oh,
Well,
definitely.
Sanskrit mantras that come through the lineage that I was initiated in. So they're great. Basically what we talked about, the subconscious and subconscious patterns that may sabotage. Mantra is sacred syllables. Om Shri Mahalakshmiye Namaha. I just sang salutation and praises to the goddess of abundance. And so if I want to bring in some clients, I'll say Om Shri Mahalakshmiye Namaha 108 times, or as many times as it takes to make that phone ring.
Can
And
you
so
say
this,
it again for us so that we can kind of hear it?
yes, here's your magical money tip.
Okay.
Om, which is
Om.
the universal
Yeah.
consciousness. Shreem, the seed, Shrim, Shreem. Maha, which means great in Sanskrit, like Mahatma Gandhi, great soul. Om Shreem Maha, and then the goddess's name is Lakshmi, Lakshmi. Means it's like bring that energy up, Shakti. Om Shreem Mahalakshmiye, and then the salutation Namaha, which brings it down to earth. Om Shri Mahalakshmiye Namaha. I'm singing the praises to the Divine Mother who blesses us with abundance. And I say that over and over to her. And so that's a technique that works for me because I believe in it. I can feel the sound vibration in my body when I do that, and other people feel it. I'm at a level because of the dispensation that the gurus that I've studied with 4 in Sanskrit mantra that have all been connected in the same lineage of Namadeva Acharya, Thomas Ashley Farrand, who's the leading authority. He's left his body in 2010, but I can now give people like a blessing with it. It's called Satya Sankalpa, so that they can experience it. Yes, you have to chant it yourself, but if you work with somebody who's been given the guru dispensation, I can now transmit this to you. Like, so everybody hearing this can get in on that party, right?
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
So I find that powerful, but combining it with everything else. But, the other thing is another fun technique I wanted to, very basic. I'm kind of old school, so I like hard copy because I feel there's less of a disconnect. Yeah. So I get my schedule, right? Old school schedule, and I have the week coming ahead, right? Here's the planner, right? At a glance. I see where I have spots open, okay? Where I might not have bookings and where I want to work. Yeah. So I look at that. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get somebody for 2:00 on Tuesday, the 20th. That's open. And I kind of put that intention out. Like, here's an open spot that I'm going to fill. And then I go through the schedule for, let's say, just a week at a time for that week and see, oh, what's still open? And I intend that that's going to be filled. The other thing I'll do is intend an amount of money, like, oh, I want to make this much. And I keep it very realistic. I know people do this and they work with unrealistic amounts, and that's just setting yourself up for frustration. So you work with a realistic amount, here we go, June. It's all empty, but I will fill that, and I tend to like go only a few weeks. And, I have my ongoing people who have booked out months in advance, but I just find it sort of comes a little bit from the Abraham teachings. Yes. But not fully, because I put my own twist on it. But basically it's like energy flows where attention goes. So I put my attention in these open spaces, and I'm like, I want to work that day, and I want to work these hours, and someone's going to call and take that spot. And I basically affirm it. And then it happens. People don't understand how energetically we can have a lot of fun with this. And that's the way to look at it. Get the stress out of it. Get the money worry. Yes. Get the money worry, get the stress out of it. And this is a fun game you can play with your schedule. But I find
Yes.
it works. You got to have the hard copy. There's something about the consciousness
Oh,
connecting
I completely agree
with
with you on
something
that.
not written down as opposed to in your phone.
Yeah, I'm over here writing notes with my pencil. Like I'm very much,
Good work.
be a millennial, quote unquote. Oh, hate that term. But, I really think there's so much power in the written word. So yeah, I completely agree with you on that.
Yes, and seeing it. I mean, I think that some of us are actually visual.
Yeah.
And so you want to see a whole week in front of you. You don't want to just see it on, your phone. You want to,
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm very visual, and a lot of healers tend to be, because we're working with our right brain and we're the creatives. And so left brain can kind of limit our creative power. So we want to be able to work with that. Write this down.
I just love that. And I didn't even realize, hello, write this down. Like, yes. Love that. And you're so right. I think we were talking about this actually before we got on the call. We are right brained, a lot of us healers, and it's okay to be. And I think sometimes we think we need to wear every hat. And if we're, we have to learn how to do the website, we have to learn how to do the automation, we have to learn how to do the email blast, all of it. But realistically, our brains are not always best used in that way, unless that's something you genuinely want to be doing and enjoy.
Yeah, and that's a big lesson, because it can create a lot of frustration. And, they have this in other businesses, and it's like, farm it out. Like, if you're not going to do the technical, I've tried to do it, and I know that it's something that creates more frustration than it's worth, and it takes me away from the work of being with clients. So this is where, even though it may be, oh, it's going to cost me some money, it always will pay off. It always pays off, and it frees you up to continue perpetuating the work that you do best.
Yes. Love that.
And being in prosperity consciousness means that, there's help. There are people who actually, I always tell clients of mine, who it's their path or their karma to do their left brain technology to help people like us. They're going to get the good mojo from it, and they're going to be paying off their service karma when they work with people like us. So it's a win-win.
And it is. And it's so fun for me. I've found, I love hiring people. Like we were talking before, I have an amazing virtual assistant, and just knowing that I'm helping her and she's helping me, that beautiful win-win thing that we do, especially as women, but even more so as light workers, that is, I think the future of our economy is going to be this really, really beautiful collaboration between all of us.
Yes, it is the new paradigm of business that's coming into the planet. And it is, everybody wins. We bring our gifts in, and everybody's going to benefit, and everybody's going to make some money while they're doing it too. It's about prosperity, consciousness, and everybody will rise up together.
And why do you think that that's so important right now? I mean, as far as, I guess just that. Why do you think that's so important at this time in our history?
Well, we're at a time when the old structures are kind of crumbling. Saturn's in Capricorn, Pluto in Capricorn. One is a 28, 30-year cycle, and one is a 248-year cycle, and they're both coming together. So some of the existing structures aren't serving people, and it's been a very divisive and not a unity consciousness. And we're having a shift on the planet where it's unity consciousness. So new paradigms are coming up as the old ones start disintegrating and going away. I mean, in the cycle of Saturn, 30 years, the last time we had this was in the late 80s and early 90s. And that was the fall of Soviet communism and the Berlin Wall. So that was the end of a certain structure that had been on the planet, believe it or not, for 30 years before it got erected in 1961, and then it came down in 89, 90. So it was exactly a Saturn cycle. So we have that cycle repeating itself. Old structures that aren't serving are going to be going away. So we replace it with new paradigms. And so the other thing, the Lightworker thing has been coming for a while. And now I believe that we are close to critical mass when there will be a shift of the whole collective. And so it's not about being enslaved to the company or the corporation, although some people will choose to continue in that route in a different way. But it's really the entrepreneur, and it's really, put your money where your mouth is, align your soul powers or gifts, if you will, with your work, with the work that you're actually meant here to be. And so then we get back to my soul dharma report, which actually
Yes.
illustrates that for people more specifically based on your sun sign.
And yes, so the Soul Dharma report, that's perfect timing. Thank you for that. That is your free gift that you're offering. So tell us more about what our audience can receive by taking this report.
Okay, so you can obtain it by opting in on my website, JillJardine.com. It's right at the top saying, get your soul dharma report. It's based on your sun sign astrology, which, for instance, right now it's February. We're in the time of Aquarius until next Tuesday, the 19th, we switch into Pisces. So everybody pretty much knows their sun sign. And so based on that, through years of working in astrology and my gifts of channeling information, I put together for each sign what your dharma or your life calling is. So if there's, and some people may be doing it to some extent, but they may not realize there's another piece to it, and some people may not even know what it is. I think it's very helpful. And I'm starting a series of giving free content like this, some for opt-in and some that will just be available. So stay tuned to my website, JillJardine.com. This is in a very beginning developmental stage, but the Dharma report is there. It's there for you. And book a reading while you're there, right?
Heck yeah. I love that. And I just have to say, you already put out so much amazing free content. Your weekly astrology, is it monthly astrology or weekly?
Right. It's monthly or bi-monthly. It's usually coordinated to the moon cycle. So I try to get it out in time for the full moon each month and the new moon. So I just got out the new moon one. By the way, the opt-in not only will give you the Dharma report, but it will put you on a mailing list to get all that free content of the bi-monthly newsletters. Sometimes once a month, sometimes twice. February, we had a busy month. We had a couple eclipses here in February 2018. So we had to get out two. And you can still access those too. If you've missed one through my Facebook, Jill Jardine, Astrologer, Spiritual Intuitive. Like me on Facebook, you can access that on that, or even my personal page. I tend to share it on that as well. So people love this content. You can't find it anywhere else. It's not taken from anywhere. I write it all myself. It's all from my own experience as an astrologer and what I channel at that particular time of the year when I'm writing about.
Oh, well, you just give so much value, and you gave us so much today as well. I thank you.
I thank you, Colleen. Thank you for this opportunity. And thank you for this great project of yours. This is a wonderful venue for people to get information, and you're doing amazing service and amazing work for the planet. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jill. Namaste.
Okay.